Hey Wargamers, today I want to talk a little bit more about the 8th edition preview rules that we got at Adepticon. Now, before we get into that, just want to say thanks for watching. Let me know what you think in the comments below, whether it's about this video or the previous videos, commentary on the 8th edition rule set, and of course I'll put a link to both the preview and that earlier video in the comments below. So check those both out. But yeah, so a little bit more on the preview rules that we got. So during Adepticon, they gave us a handful of different general concepts that they are going to address with 8th edition. And each one of these, I think, can be applied without drastically overhauling the entire rule book. I don't think that we need to necessarily go to an entire redo of the 40k system like we saw with Warhammer going into Age of Sigmar. I don't think that it's absolutely necessary that we start from scratch. And this is a point that I don't think everyone, or at least a lot of the voices that you see on YouTube and in the internet in general, are necessarily appreciating. And of course, I think it would be a lot easier for GW maybe to start from scratch for this, but again, it doesn't necessarily mean that's going to happen. And so this video, I want to talk a little bit more about how each of these things might be implemented without having to completely scrap the 40k system that we know and love today. So the first thing that they previewed was 3 ways to play. Again, that's not really a big deal, right? They're just saying that there's going to be different rules for army construction. So this doesn't affect any codex in particular right off the bat, right? So we can have narrative rules for construction, we can have competitive rules for construction, and we can have no rules for construction. Those are like the 3 main ways that they could potentially play. And so that's okay. Easy, right? The next thing is army selection. And again, I talked a little bit more about this in my previous video, but the idea is that they want to reward fluffy army lists. They want to institute command points, which are a mechanism that they are introducing in order to give certain perks for fluffy lists, whether that's like a reroll on some aspect of the game or at a critical point or something like that, right? So some sort of mechanic that is a benefit only to army lists that meet certain fluffy criteria. And this is something that, really could be easily instituted with new formations and new data slates. We don't necessarily need to scrap the existing codices to add command points to future formations. And, probably what they would do is just start including command points with new formations that they roll out. Yes, this means that old formations would not necessarily have those, but that's okay, right? The next portion is movement. They want to give every unit a movement characteristic so that it's not just a default unit type. So no longer is it infantry, no longer is it jump infantry or beast or anything like that. It's going to have its own movement characteristic, just like we used to have in Warhammer Fantasy and do have in Age of Sigmar, right? So that is something that, again, I think is going to allow a little bit more versatility or diversity across armies and should be fun to play with. But it doesn't necessarily mean that every single codex and every single unit entry needs to get a new data sheet or a new war scroll or anything like that, right? We don't need to throw the codices out into the garbage to make this happen. What they can do is something that they've done in the past where they say, okay, if your codex is older or if your rule set is older, it may talk about X, Y, and Z rules. Okay, for this edition, treat that as this, right? So what I mean by that is for infantry or for infantry in this case, they could say, all right, most units have a movement of 6 unless otherwise noted, right? So that right off the bat takes care of most unit types without having to go and reproduce a rule set for them. They can do something very simple like that for, you know, all the default unit types that we have right now. And it wouldn't be too much effort. It could be like a Band-Aid supplemental document that they have online alongside the new rules. They don't need to completely they don't need to even have it in the actual rule book. It can just be an online supplement that says, okay, jetpack infantry now move like this, jump infantry now move like this, beast move like this, monstrous creatures move like this. So they don't have to completely redo it. Combat phase, they want to reward people for outmaneuvering their opponent. Again, that's just a simple rule, right? Instead of having the rules that we have now, they will just change them, and that doesn't need to affect the current codices. So that's a win there. And then morale checks. I think this is something that a lot of people are really concerned about, at least based off the comments from my previous video. With morale checks, they want to have it kind of be like Battleshock and Age of Sigmar, where every unit will take a test at the end of the turn or at the end of the phase based on the number of models that they lose. And instead of running away, they'll just lose models based on this result. So this isn't something that we need to worry too much about, again, because things that are fearless or things that have special rules that make them ignore leadership tests or morale checks, things like that, they can just use this new rule that they come up with. Instead of having morale checks happen when you lose 25% of a unit, they'll happen all the time, and the given rules that we have currently can still just apply to that. There doesn't need to necessarily be this big overcomplicated explanation. They can just call this new mechanic the same thing as the old mechanic, and the rules should work more or less the same. And if not, they can add an FAQ and errata to the codices or to the rulebook, or again to this potential supplemental document that they could provide alongside it. So those are all the main things that they want to do with the new rulebook that they told us at Adepticon, at least. And I don't think that we need to be too worried about all of our codices being completely revamped, completely thrown in the garbage. There's still a possibility that they could be useful and transition very cleanly into this new edition. So that's what I want to talk about, and I hope that made sense. Let me know in the comments below if it didn't make sense, but also if it made sense and you like it, or you don't think that that's accurate, or we're never going to see that, it's, you know, just a complete shit show. Let me know either way in the comments below. But yeah, I think it'll be fine, guys. Don't worry too much about it. All right. Thanks for watching, and of course, happy wargaming.